The house had grown quieter in Daniel's absence. It wasn't the comforting silence Sophia Carter once enjoyed when her husband was simply away at work. No, this was the kind of emptiness that pressed against her chest, heavy and suffocating. It had been nearly a year since he passed, yet some nights she still turned toward his side of the bed, expecting to see his broad frame rising and falling in sleep. She exhaled slowly, her fingers tracing the cool linen of his pillow. The scent of him had long faded, but muscle memory made her seek it out. From the hallway, she heard the steady footsteps of her son, Ethan. The sound was familiar, grounding. He had moved back home after Daniel's death, insisting that she shouldn't be alone in a house so full of ghosts. At 22, Ethan was a man now, taller than his father, his voice deeper. His presence steady in a way that reminded her painfully of what she had lost. "Mom, you haven't eaten." His voice was gentle but firm. He stood at the doorframe, arms crossed over his chest. "I made dinner." Sophia sat up, pushing away the remnants of nostalgia clinging to her like cobwebs. "I wasn't hungry." Ethan sighed and stepped inside, setting a plate on her nightstand. "You always say that." She glanced at the meal. Grilled chicken, roasted potatoes, something green. He was trying. He had taken on responsibilities he shouldn't have to, but she let him because it was easier than being alone with her grief. "Thank you," she murmured. Ethan hesitated. His eyes, dark like hers, studied her carefully. "Mom, I worry about you." She forced a small smile. "I'm fine." It was a lie, but he let it slide. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. Downstairs, the house felt warmer, lived in. The fireplace crackled softly, casting a golden glow against the walls. Sophia settled onto the couch, tucking her legs beneath her. Ethan sat across from her, watching the fire. "How was work?" she asked, breaking the silence. He shrugged. "Same as always. Customers. Coffee." The occasional entitled businessman demanding a drink that doesn't exist. A small laugh escaped her. It felt foreign, unnatural, but Ethan smiled at the sound. "You used to love making fun of Daniel's complicated coffee orders," she mused. Ethan's smile faltered. "Yeah." Beat of silence. Then he said, "I miss him too." Sophia inhaled sharply. She wasn't sure why it surprised her. Of course, Ethan missed his father. But something about the quiet, unwavering way he said it sent a pang through her chest. "I know," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "He'd be proud of you." Ethan didn't respond right away. His gaze remained on the fire, expression unreadable. Then, softly, "I just wish I could do more for you." "You already do too much." "That's not true." He turned to face her fully. "You don't sleep. You barely eat. You act like you're fine, but I know you're not." She looked away. "It's just hard." Ethan reached for her hand before she could think to pull away. His grip was warm, steady. Comforting weight. "You're not alone, Mom." The words sent a strange heat through her, something too complex to name. He was right, she wasn't alone. But that didn't mean the loneliness inside her had disappeared. If anything, it had taken on a different shape. She squeezed his hand once before letting go. "I know." Ethan studied her for a moment longer before nodding. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. Later that night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Sophia stood in front of the bathroom mirror, her fingers grazing the delicate lines at the corners of her eyes. She had aged in the past year. Not just physically, but in a way that made her feel like a different person. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. She tried to conjure Daniel's face in her mind, but it was Ethan's she saw instead. His quiet concern, his unwavering presence. A thought surfaced, unbidden. He looked so much like him. Her stomach twisted, guilt pooling in the hollow space beneath her ribs. She turned off the bathroom light and slipped into bed, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere down the hall, Ethan slept peacefully. She wished she could do the same. Morning crept in through the sheer bedroom curtains, casting soft golden light across the room. Sophia lay still, staring at the ceiling, exhaustion pressing against her bones despite the restless hours of sleep she had managed. She had dreamt of Daniel again, not in the way she wanted, not in the way that brought comfort. Instead, his face blurred and shifted, his voice fading into something indistinct, until it was Ethan's presence she felt rather than her husband's. A shudder rippled through her. She sat up abruptly, running a hand over her face. This is grief, she told herself. This is loneliness playing tricks on my mind. The scent of freshly brewed coffee drifted up the stairs. Ethan was awake. He had developed a habit of rising early, making breakfast, filling the spaces Daniel had left behind. She exhaled slowly and made her way downstairs. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. Ethan stood in the kitchen, dressed in a fitted navy t-shirt and jeans, his back to her as he flipped eggs in a pan. His broad shoulders tensed slightly when he heard her enter, then relaxed. "Morning," he said without turning around. Sophia leaned against the counter, watching him work. "You don't have to cook for me every day." He glanced over his shoulder, offering her a small, knowing smile. "If I didn't, you wouldn't eat." She didn't argue. He plated the eggs, sliding one dish toward her before pouring them both a cup of coffee. As he sat across from her at the dining table, Sophia found herself studying him. "You look tired," she said before she could stop herself. Ethan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I could say the same about you." There was something about the way he looked at her, an attentiveness that made her feel seen in a way that was both comforting and unsettling. She shifted in her seat, wrapping her hands around the warmth of her coffee mug. "I was thinking," he said after a beat of silence, "maybe we should do something different today. Get out of the house." Sophia arched a brow. "Like what?" "I don't know." He shrugged. "Drive. A walk somewhere nice. Just something." The idea felt foreign. It had been months since she had willingly left the house for anything other than necessities. But something in Ethan's expression made her hesitate, like he was trying in his own way to pull her back into the world. "All right," she murmured. "A drive sounds nice. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit." The air was crisp, the autumn wind rustling through the trees as Ethan drove. The road stretched ahead, winding lazily through countryside that Sophia had long since stopped appreciating. She watched the scenery pass, her fingers idly toying with the hem of her sweater. Ethan kept one hand on the wheel, his other resting casually on the center console. "You used to love this drive," he mused. "Remember when Dad would take us out here just to watch the leaves change?" She nodded, a bittersweet ache settling in her chest. He always said it reminded him that change wasn't something to be afraid of. Ethan hummed in agreement, his gaze fixed on the road. "Do you think he'd want you to live like this?" Sophia turned sharply toward him. "Like what?" "Like you're frozen in time." His words cut deeper than she expected. She swallowed, her grip tightening around the fabric of her sleeve. "It's not that simple." "I know." He glanced at her, eyes warm, understanding. "But I hate seeing you like this. I hate knowing you're hurting and I can't fix it." She looked away, staring out at the blur of orange and red leaves. "Some things can't be fixed, Ethan." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached across the console, his hand brushing against hers before gently closing around it. A simple gesture, one meant to soothe, to anchor. But it sent an unexpected warmth through her, something foreign, something she couldn't name. Her breath hitched. She didn't pull away. The car slowed as Ethan turned onto a quiet overlook, pulling into an empty space. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy, not uncomfortable, but charged with something unsaid. Sophia finally forced herself to move, slipping her hand from his as she reached for the door handle. "Let's step outside." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. The view was breathtaking. Rolling hills stretched endlessly, painted in shades of gold and russet. The sky was vast, the sun beginning its slow descent, casting long shadows against the ground. Sophia wrapped her arms around herself, breathing in the crisp air. Ethan stood beside her, hands tucked into his pockets, his gaze unreadable. "I miss him," she admitted softly. Ethan turned toward her. "I know." She glanced at him, studying the familiar lines of his face. The strong jaw, the way his brows furrowed slightly when he was deep in thought. He looked so much like him. A lump formed in her throat. Ethan shifted closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're not alone, Mom." Her pulse quickened. "I know," she said, though the words felt like a lie. She wasn't alone. But she wasn't sure what she was anymore.